We're with Judge Kevin Carey, bankruptcy judge in the District of Delaware. Judge, how many bankruptcy cases have you presided over?
I don't know. I don't really keep a count, but I've been on the bench 14 years.
So obviously many bankruptcy
I've
cases.
had a few, yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about what you strive for in a fair decision on a bankruptcy. What are the most important things?
Well, in a large Chapter 11, which is really mostly our diet in Delaware, what I try to do is get the parties to a place where they can come to a consensus about how to exit the bankruptcy. Because bankruptcies are multi-constituent cases. It's not just a plaintiff against a defendant. They're in a courtroom, but there are a number of interests involved. And so I make the decisions that I should make and that I have to make to give the parties some direction. Judges are asked to decide a lot of things. Sometimes it's better not to decide something and let the parties try to work it out. The trick is in making a decision to make it as promptly as you can, so the parties know what it is you're thinking about, what it is they'd like to do, and then they'll make a plan hopefully for a successful exit from Chapter 11.
How much of the specifics of the company do you have to get to know before you feel you're comfortable making a considered decision?
Well, one of the great joys of the job is to learn a lot about a lot of different companies and industries. Sometimes what's happening in the industry is important, and the parties inform me about that. Sometimes it's more important than what's happening at the company itself, but often it's a combination of things, both trying to fix an operational issue or a balance sheet issue at the company because it may be over-leveraged, as so many are today, or maybe there's an industry trend that the company is going to have to take into account in changing its business strategy or its business operations. It all depends on the individual situation.
Has some of the, the financial industry has been certainly innovative in its financing. Have you seen some of these innovations lead to trouble in in corporate finance?
Well, I would say at bottom, the biggest trouble is that borrowers borrow money they shouldn't be borrowing, and lenders lend money they shouldn't be lending. And it's resulted in the over-leveraging of many balance sheets. And so if a company should come into a bankruptcy like that, it means unlike 20 years ago, there may be nothing for unsecured creditors except to try to pursue avoidance actions, preference recoveries, fraudulent transfer recoveries. So sometimes a lot of litigation is generated because that's the only value that unsecured creditors will see.
And what about companies that are with more intellectual property than there is physical assets?
Well, and intellectual property can be extremely valuable. With some companies, as you point out, it's really the only asset of value. And it may be that a company will try to monetize some of it, but continue operations, and sometimes it's simply a liquidation, and the goal is to try to get as much for it as the company can for distribution to creditors.
I'm just wondering whether after you come to the decision the company exits bankruptcy, they have a plan. Do you keep a scorecard personally as to whether this company's going to make it or not afterwards?
I don't. I mean, I do recognize that a bankruptcy court is just a stop along the continuum because there's been restructuring activity typically for a year or two or more before the company comes into bankruptcy, and I know there's more of the story to be told and to happen afterwards. I am from time to time reminded, for example, if I've made a valuation decision about whether I was right or wrong about the company's value, politely of course, when I'm wrong. But no, unless there's some post-confirmation event that requires my attention or that I have jurisdiction to decide, I don't know what happens unless I read it in the papers.
And how would you make the process better? I mean, you know it from the inside. What could be done to make it more efficient, more fair?
I don't know if there's one single thing. You know, the ABI Bankruptcy Reform Commission has recently issued a report after a couple of years of study. I co-chaired the Valuation Advisory Committee, and there are lots of ideas that have been suggested. But I think the central theme would be to do things which make the process less expensive for most companies. By and large, most of the Chapter 11s that are filed by small and medium-sized businesses. An expense of the Chapter 11 is a big deal for them. So anything that decreases the cost and makes the process quicker and less contentious, if that's possible, would be a good thing.
Good. Well, let's hope that happens. Judge, thank you very much for being here with us today.
You're very welcome.